Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Autonomous IT Live. We have a very special episode for you today. We have Justin Talerico on, and we're going to be asking him some hard questions. Justin is the CEO of Automox, so we're going to ask him some questions about the IT industry. But before we get started, Justin, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Good to see you, Landon. See you quite often, but this is a different context. I'm Justin Talerico, CEO of Automox. I've been here at the business for about 4.5 years. Prior to becoming CEO, the middle of 2025, I was the Chief Marketing Officer. Been in software and SaaS since the early 90s, and just really enjoy growing software companies. And Automox is a pretty terrific one with tons of great people like Landon involved. So yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I had in my notes to use the joke that you were in SaaS before it was called SaaS, but now to might have to pull that one again later.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. So to get started, whenever I talk to people in IT, they always have kind of this golden memory of their first computer. So whether it's a CIO, a CISO, or any sysadmin, if you kind of ask them, where did you start with computing? They can kind of tell exactly how it felt when you first turned on a computer, or like when it first kind of clicked with the computer that this was going to change something. So what's your version of that story?
I have a fun origin story. My dad was an industrial designer at IBM since the late 50s, worked on the Selectric typewriter, IBM mid-range systems, and ultimately culminating with the IBM PC. And so that was around 1980. A lot of dating here, but that's okay. So I started computing when I was 9 years old, and my 9-year-old self wanted to reproduce the Defender video game, the arcade game, on a computer, which was a novel idea. So that was in the age of Radio Shack Model 1s, Texas Instruments, Commodore 64s, a whole lineage of machines that preceded the Apple I, the IBM PC. Anyway, I started to code when I was 9, really just trying to reproduce the Defender video game, and caught the bug from that point forward. It was green screen. It kind of worked. I know that's the answer everybody wants to hear.
When was the last time you played the Defender video game then? Whether your version or the arcade version? So.
Probably when I was a teenager. It wore off pretty quickly. There were other video games to slay after that.
I love it. So a lot of us came into IT with that sense of discovery, but somewhere along the way, it got harder. In the last year, especially, we've noticed kind of a burnout has been a really big issue among IT departments. So how did we come from kind of this sense of discovery, this love for computers, to burnout? Kind of what, for a lot of IT professionals, what do you think got heavy? What do you think changed in that?
Go back to that origin story for a minute, because where it progresses is I founded my first company in, I think, 1992, so a little more dating for you. But part of what I learned very quickly was that keeping staff computers in line, which still at that time meant patched and configured properly, was a business level challenge. Meaning when those machines drifted, it caused me personally as a founder way more pain than if I could just keep them where they needed to be. And I think where you see a lot of burnout is just that exacerbated over the course of 30 years, where individuals are trying to keep thousands of machines from drifting out of sync, and that's stressful. And those machines are now halfway around the world. You've got hybrid workforces, you've got multiple operating systems, all the ingredients to kind of drive somebody nuts. And I self-managed our fleet of machines, which were both primarily Macs by then, but plenty of Windows machines, through 10 million in revenue of that company that I founded. And the only way to do that was to keep them from drifting using technology, because, otherwise they were all over the place and they would just cause chaos. And so, I multiply that, like, from the first time I ever heard about Automox, that was the intrigue, was how do we help these people, actually manage thousands of machines at scale without driving themselves nuts.
Yeah, I like that. So when you're looking at kind of operational risks, IT burnout, where do you place that on kind of the operational risk scale within? It's like, hey, if the IT guy is just completely burnt out, doesn't care, is that the operational risk, or is there other risks that you would classify as kind of the almost not necessarily the operational risk, but kind of the ones that people don't necessarily notice as much?
I mean, there's the obvious one, which is the security risk. So if a machine is drifted out of its ideal state, the security risk to the business is huge. Machines degrade when they're drifted, so that means they slow down. That means workforces are less performant. The risks are acute for the IT admin that is stressed out and burned out, but the stress on the business is much greater even than the stress on the IT team.
Yeah. So from the CEO perspective, how do you mitigate burnout? If you see your IT team or any other employees out there just really kind of starting to burn out, what do you do? What do you do to mitigate that?
I think philosophically, what you want people to do is work that they feel is meaningful. And meaningful work translates to people who are passionate and engaged, and passionate and engaged people usually do their best work. And when they do their best work, they make fewer mistakes, and they feel better when they come to work. I think, I tell people often that really what I go for is I want you to come to work with a smile on your face and be happy with what you do. And, I think for me, that begins with making sure that they're doing meaningful things, not rote work over and over again, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So going off the rote work a little bit, why do you think the IT industry keeps treating manual work as a necessary evil instead of a design failure?
There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that automation is more dangerous than that manual work. I don't necessarily think that data bears that out. I think we know that people make plenty of mistakes, but they feel like mistakes that they understand, that they have transparency into, that they can relate to, versus this feeling that there's a black box that's making mistakes on their behalf that they could then suffer for. So, part of successful automation in sort of, I think, any business, any software, is that software providing the transparency to help you understand what it's doing, why it's doing it, and that the outcomes from the changes that it's making are for the betterment of the business. When you don't have that trust, people are just afraid that it's going to break something on their behalf, and they're going to suffer as a result.
So what should leaders do when their employees don't trust their tools or the automation or each other, or if they feel like implementing automation would automate themselves out of a job? Like, how should a leader address that?
Trust and vulnerability in all aspects of work, I think, kind of go hand in hand. You have to trust that the business is in your career best interest, I guess. You're not going to stop automation from happening. It's a question of how you participate in that, and how you make yourself valuable as part of that equation. So you're not taking yourself out of a job. You're just taking yourself out of doing rote things over and over again. And in exchange for that, you're doing more meaningful work, more strategic work, work that has more truly higher value for the business versus lower value for the business. Yeah. Because, that repetitious pattern recognition is best left to computers, where the strategic decision making is best left to people who get the space and the time to be able to do that work.
All right. So we talked about the benefits of automation. What's the biggest signal when you're talking with we won't say a customer, a prospect, I guess, that they're automating for the wrong reasons?
I think if they're automating for shortcuts, if they're automating because they don't have skills on a team, if they're automating because they don't have talent, you end up with tool sprawl, devoid of best practice. And ultimately, no matter how strong the tool set is, it still comes down to the craftsman versus the tool. Yeah. And you need both the tool and the best practices. So I think the scariest thing is when someone's trying to automate and they don't have the core skill set to actually ask for the right things to happen with that automation. And then they're really leaning, it's a pretty hollow promise. It's like, what am I automating and why? And they can't answer that question.
All right. So Justin, the AEM manifesto talks about intentional automation over reactive firefighting. So do you think most organizations want this shift? Do you think they even know that they're in the reactive state? How do you know that you're in that reactive state? How do you know that there's a better path forward, and what can you do to get out of that reactive state?
I think a lot of them know they're in a reactive state. I don't necessarily think a lot of them know how to extract themselves from that reactive state. And this goes to that idea of being able to identify what does good look like, and most notably, what does bad look like before it manifests with risk or disruption. And so, yeah, I think they know they're reactive. Not sure they know how to get themselves out of what is probably a relatively vicious cycle, which is that they're spending all that time reacting. And so they don't even have the capacity to think about how to become proactive, much less do it. Yeah.
So when you look at organizations, or we're talking with organizations that are definitely in that reactive state, how do you suggest they get out of that reactive state into a proactive state? Is it taking a step back and because a lot of times, like you said, with reactive states, it's, hey, I am just barely keeping my head above water here. Like nothing is on fire right now. But
this goes back to some of the macro forces just in business and in cost management, all constraining capacity tighter and tighter, and expecting more output and outcomes from less and less in terms of resource allocation. And at some point, the business is making a case that says, okay, we have to spend less, invest less in managing fleets of more and more devices spread further and further around the world, connected with an internet connection, and that's about it. And at some point, IT, and probably more notably security, has to stand up and say that we have a potential strategic lever to use IT as an advantage. Because when machines are not drifted, when they are close to an ideal state, more often, they're less of a liability. And so you naturally improve the business. But I think a lot of IT departments operate much further down from that. So at some point, management has to acknowledge that there's both a risk and an advantage to be had in using IT much more strategically and much less like a whack-a-mole.
I like that one. So, in your opinion, which of these is more dangerous? It's automated, don't worry about it, or I'll just keep doing this manually?
They're both dangerous, Landon.
All right. Good answer.
They're both dangerous. I mean, it's automated. Don't worry about it. That sounds very black box. I think that's the core fear of a lot of IT folks and just people in general with software automation. And then it's manual. I'll take care of it. People make tons of mistakes, and the more rote work that people do, the more mistakes they make, because the more tired they are, the more burned out they are, the more prone they are to, do things that are perhaps uncharacteristic of their skill set, but they're just kind of beyond their capacity because they're being asked to do more and more and more with less and less and less. And so both of those are very dangerous statements.
Yeah. All right. So let's zoom out a little bit. You've had a front row seat for quite some time in the IT industry. You have a front row seat right now also. So if you stripped away the marketing language, how would you describe the real operational maturity of the average enterprise IT organization going into 2026? What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? What, from your experience, what should we expect going into 2026?
I think what we still continue to see is a proliferation of tools, a lot of loosely coupled interaction. You still have, many more tools that tell you what's broken, especially in terms of security and vulnerability scanners and everything else, and relatively few that actually help you reliably remediate all those things that are broken. And so that continues to be a trend. I think what you're going to see in our industry, as well as many others, is consolidation, where there's more valuation of simplicity and unification, and really this idea that ultimately you have to have great tooling, but it all has to work together well, and it has to have great governance, which comes in the form of best practices. And when you have those two things together, that you actually have performance systems, and that's where a lot of the gap is. There's buy another tool to do another thing, and it's like, but wait, we've got 16 tools doing 16 things, and none of them are talking to each other, and it's pretty questionable what the outcome is of that. And so, if you know that what you want to do is reduce your attack surface by keeping your machines from drifting, going back to since the early 90s for me, these machines that drifted were a liability. Mm-hmm. If that's what you want to do, and you have solutions that reduce your mean time to remediate from 30 days to 7 days, well, that's a real outcome, and you can manage to that, and you can just make sure that you have the tooling to do that, not 16 tools to do 16 things.
So for the organization with 16 tools to do 16 things, you touched on something I thought that was really interesting, was kind of the complexity. Things are becoming too complex to manage. So for those organizations that are out there, they take a step back and they say, wow, I do have far too many tools. What next steps would you recommend?
I think we do it all the time here at Automox. We're critically evaluating the tools that we have and assessing where we have strengths and weaknesses and what the outcomes are from those tools, and which ones are creating complexity without an equal exchange of value of, really creating a business outcome. And so, if you have tools that automate across your fleet, and you have tools that allow you to do one-on-one work for anything where the automation doesn't do what it's supposed to do, that makes sense. If you have 5 different tools that do sort of overlapping things, then what happens is those tools end up stepping on each other's toes, and you really don't know. You don't really have causation when something breaks, and you also, I think, really don't know what is producing a good result out of that stack either. So the simplification of tools, like help me understand what good looks like, help me understand what bad looks like, help me to proactively shift what bad looks like to what good looks like before it becomes a problem. That becomes a pretty simple way to look at least at the IT stack and go, what's additive and what's superfluous in that stack.
Yeah. IT often gets seen as a cost center, or worse, kind of a department of always saying no, or the department of, hey, why isn't this working? So what can IT teams do to kind of start showing their business impact so that they're not always playing defense?
Yeah, and it's a great question because it's near and dear to my heart, which is giving them the firepower to be able to show the business value of effective IT. And it kind of goes back to that concept of machines that are in a drifted state, whether that's configuration, patch management, whatever that is. They're not in an ideal state. They have a cost to the business, and most IT teams can't demonstrate that cost. So they can't demonstrate the inverse of that, which is the upside to the business when those machines are doing what they're supposed to do, and when their attack surface is smaller, and they can demonstrate to their C levels that they are more secure, that their risk is reduced, that their performance is improved, and they can show how that's maintained over time. So I think the biggest thing they can do is turn into a strategic lever for the business versus that department that's always sneered at and thought of as under delivering against promises that are really tough to keep,
So one of the things that we always joke about on our podcast is that most IT professionals so IT is the combination of people and computers, and most IT professionals went into IT because computers were the easy part. So how important is people skills in IT departments? What can people do to kind of build those up instead of just being kind of like the insular IT department? How important is that to kind of being seen as an important department within the organization?
Well, okay. I think you all know that I have a soft spot in my heart for just the word empathy in general, and really having an understanding of where users are in their journey with computers. And it's, I think, hard for a lot of IT people to have that empathy when they are stressed so thin. And your question near the top of this around burnout goes to this pretty well. I think it's hard to expect IT people to have that empathy and understanding and that softer side when they feel like they have to solve a problem in 30 seconds and it's a problem that they shouldn't have to solve in the first place. And so I think it starts with, machines being proactively managed so that they don't trip those wires all the time and create a lot of user stress that then results in IT admin stress. And so for me, it comes back to empathy, but I think you have to create an environment where that empathy is plausible.
Going into 2026, what are some of the things that are holding organizations back in streamlining their IT operations?
I'll give you an example. We give you 300 odd data points on any endpoint in your stack, in your fleet, right? 300 on a Mac, 300 on a PC, maybe 300 on a Linux box. Okay, 300 data points. What good is that? Who's looking at those 300 data points, finding the patterns in them that say that this looks good, this doesn't look good, this is what a healthy device looks like versus an unhealthy device. And so what I would really like to put aside is the move out of the way, the fear of using machines to do that part of the work, to look at that sea of data, because everybody's got a sea of data, but who's really doing good work with it? Let the computers do that stuff, because you're not putting eyes on 300 data points on 5,000 devices and coming up with good solutions. Computers can do that part. And this combination of automation and compute power and trusting that part of it, and then trusting yourself with the best practices and the strategies around leveraging that, that's where we need to be. And so you got to put aside that part where you don't trust a computer to look at 300 data points on 5,000 computers.
Yeah. So when IT leaders in 2030 and 2035 look back at how we're managing endpoints today, what do you think is something that they will laugh at?
I'll laugh at the reluctance to embrace some of that stuff. Yeah. They'll laugh at the fear of automation. I mean, you don't have to blindly trust. That was definitely one of your questions earlier, which was more dangerous. Blind trust, not a good plan. But when you have good tooling governed by strong best practices, at least trusting that tooling to help you identify what's good, what's bad, and how you help what's bad look better. I think it's scary to think that fleets of thousands of devices could plausibly be governed by a few people, which is what a lot of these teams are down to, Yeah.
All right. So I think we're ready for Maddie. Maddie, I'm going to go ahead and bring you in.
All right. Well, Justin, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you, Maddie.
And I'm hopping in.
You're wearing my uniform. I like it.
Justin uniform of tech people everywhere. Classic black. So some of you may recognize me from our podcast series. So just a quick plug for that. But if you have watched any of my podcasts, you'll know that I typically wrap up with a game, which is exactly what we're going to do right now. But before we get to that part, I'm going to read you a quote, Justin, from Henry David Thoreau, which is maybe not what you were expecting, given what we're about to talk about. But this is from his book Walden from 1854. And he says, "No doubt another may think for me, but it is not therefore desirable that he should do so to the exclusion of my thinking for myself." And I think maybe he could have been advising us on how to use AI, at this point, gosh, almost 200 years ago. So wanted to kick the game off with that, but let's get into the actual game and how it works now. So it is AI versus human versus hybrid, and you should be able to see that on your screen, and you'll see why in just a second. But basically, I'm going to do a rapid fire explain an IT task. There might be some regular normal person tasks peppered in there as well. And rapid fire, you got to tell me, would an AI be the best to do it, a human or a hybrid? And that's where the words come in. So go ahead and point to them just like you were on any fabulous game show. And yeah, we can jump into it. You just got to tell me when you're ready.
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
All right, here we go. Okay, number 1, deploying OS patches across remote endpoints.
Hybrid.
Okay, rolling back a bad patch.
Hybrid.
Prioritizing which vulnerabilities to patch first across mixed OS environments.
Hybrid.
Brewing espresso.
Human.
I had a feeling you might say that. Verifying patch success at scale.
AI.
Detecting endpoints that drift out of compliance.
AI.
Responding to employee Slack messages.
Hybrid.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Translating vulnerability data into business risk.
AI.
Continuous risk scoring of endpoints.
AI.
A wine pairing with dinner.
Hybrid.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if that's the one I personally would have gone with, but
Yeah.
I like it. I like the vision.
I actually have a tool for that.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. You're going to have to share that. You're going to have to share that with us after this. But okay. Monitoring for misconfigurations across endpoints.
AI.
Preparing for an external security audit.
Hybrid.
Writing automation scripts for routine remediation.
Hybrid.
Drumming.
Human.
And last but not least, maintaining automation logic over time.
Hybrid.
Okay. We've got a couple of bonus questions here. And I want you to tell me, out of the below that I'm going to list, which of the following tasks should AI never do without a human? Approving emergency patch delays, responding to active ransomware incidents, deciding acceptable risk after a breach, communicating incidents to executives or customers, or making termination impacting security decisions.
What should AI never do alone?
Mm-hmm.
Probably all of those.
That would be correct. I would agree. I think the other one may be open to interpretation. Those, I think we can safely say we need human involvement. All right. Well, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I think you passed with flying colors, crushed the game. So, yeah, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Maddie.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Justin, for joining us. I think we would have called you out for tool sprawl if you would have used your AI wine pairing and an AI drummer. So I think we're good to go on that one. Glad you passed that test. But thanks so much, everybody, for joining. And we will see you next time. So.